record. And welcome to Jim Rubart, who is our guest author tonight. We're excited to have him as we kick off our Faith and Fellowship Book Festival, our first one online. Welcome, everybody. Make sure you put questions, any questions you have in the chat. You can talk to each other in the chat, whatever you'd like to do. But I'd first like to introduce James L. Rubart. He tells me that he's 28 years old, but he lives inside an older man's body. He thinks he's still young enough to water ski like a madman and dirt bike with his two grown sons. And, who are we to argue at that? You're as young as you feel. He's the best-selling Christie Hall of Fame Carol Inspy, I-N-S-P-Y, and RT Book Reviews award-winning author of 10 novels. And he loves to send readers on mind-bending journeys they'll remember months after they finish one of his stories. He's also a branding expert, an audiobook narrator, and co-founder with his son Taylor of the Rubart Writing Academy. He lives with his amazing wife on a small lake in eastern Washington. So thank you for joining us here today, Jim.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very fun to be here, Cindy.
All right, so you have some things you're going to talk about. We'll just let you get started with that. We have some readers, we have some writers. If you want to tell us what you're most interested in, go ahead and use the chat for that. But yeah, what would you most like to share with us first, Jim?
Well, first of all, to piggyback on what Cindy said, the advantage of being live and in person is you get a chance to interact with with everybody, not on a screen. The disadvantage is sometimes somebody at the back of the room doesn't have a chance to ask a question. And so I actually love this format, the Zoom format, because you have a chance to ask me any question you want. I'm going to share some thoughts with you, but as I said before we got started to the organizers, I would love it if it's just an open discussion about anything you want to talk about, anything about writing, anything about reading, anything about books, anything about my books. Please feel free to use the chat, and Yolanda is going to grab questions and throw them my way and interrupt me and say, hey, Jim, somebody'd like to talk about this. So really feel like this is an interactive, we're just sitting around, we're sitting around a campfire together and we're just talking about life and Jesus and spirituality. And so let's take it with that attitude. So with that in mind, I want to tell you the story of how I became a writer. I was 11 years old, 10, 11 years old, 6th grade, something like that. And my mom bought my sister and I the Chronicles of Narnia for Christmas. And I'd been a reader up until that point. I'd been a pretty voracious reader. But it wasn't until I read the Chronicles of Narnia, and those books just absolutely blew my mind in a good way. I was just so captivated and so taken away to the world of Narnia and the spiritual truths that were in it. And I remember after finishing, so I'm 10, 11 years old, and I remember after finishing The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and sorry, spoiler alert, if you haven't read the books, but if you haven't read them by now, at the end of that book, Aslan says to Edmund and Lucy, you're going to have to get to know me in your world. And Edmund says, you're in our world, sir? I am, but I go by a different name. And I went running into my mom and I said, Mom, I think Aslan is Jesus. I think Aslan is Jesus. And it was just one of those moments for a kid that I experienced the power of story in that moment like I'd never experienced it before. And then, of course, I read the rest of the books and was just so captivated by them. And so in that little 10, 11-year-old mind, I thought, oh my gosh, someday, I have to try to do for others what C.S. Lewis did for me. So that's the first moment where I thought, I want to try to be a writer someday. I didn't have any idea what it looked like, but that was the spark of it. So the next year, I'm in 7th grade, and my 7th grade English teacher told all of us in class, you have to write a short story. So I'm like, okay, I'll try writing a short story. So I try writing this short story, and I turn it in, get it back a few days later along with everyone else, and I've got an A. And she says, great story at the top. And then it goes one step further where video cameras had just come out back then. And she said, all right, we're going to tape, we're going to film a story, one story from class. We're going to film one of the stories. We're going to film the best story. Jim, it's your story. So we got to act out this story, this short story that I'd written. Well, to, 11-year-old mind, this is just so encouraging and so exciting. Maybe I was 12. I just thought that this is it. I'm going to be a writer. And so in that moment, the dream to become a novelist someday was just cemented. So what do you do when you're 12 years old in 7th grade and you want to be a writer? Well, in 8th grade, you sign up for journalism class. So I signed up for journalism class. And I discovered I just absolutely loved it. I loved every aspect of journalism. So all 8th grade year, I was learning to write in journalism class. And then at the end of 8th grade, the teacher says, okay, any of you who want to try out for the school paper, let me know and you can try out. And I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm going to be on the school paper. My dream of being a writer is happening. Here we go. And so I tried out and got the answer back. No, you did not make it on the school paper. And, I didn't know. I mean, we don't have that much self-awareness at that age. All I knew is my heart was crushed. My dream was broken. And I got the message, you have no ability. You can't write. So you might as well give it up. And so I did. I did. And so I put my writing on the back burner for years and years and years and years, but I couldn't make it totally go away. It was always there, right? And I'd always think about it. I'd dabble in short stories, but it just went on and on and on and on. And I remember after I got married, Darcy and I, this is early in our marriage, and I'd be, noodling on a short story or something, but I just never could really get anything going. Again, because I had this dream, but I knew I had no ability. And so I did not want to take this dream and put it out there and have it crushed. Because if I did that one more time, then I'd have nothing. If I just dabbled at the dream, well, at least I still had the dream. And so that went on, I'm not kidding you, for years and years and years and years until it must have been around 2000, I think. It must have been around the year 2000. And Darcy says to me one day, I'm going on a fast. God is telling me to fast. I said, oh, wow. Why? I don't know. Okay. How long are you going to fast? Until I get the answer. Okay. What's the question? I don't know. So after 24 hours goes by, I say, well, did the Lord tell you anything? No. Wow. Okay. 48 hours goes by. Darcy, did the Lord tell you anything? Nope. How long you to do this? Till I get the answer. What's the question? I don't know. All right. About halfway through day 3, Darcy and I are driving in the car, and I can still picture this like it happened yesterday. She's driving. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. We had this Jeep Cherokee, this white Jeep Cherokee. And we're almost home. And it's, this light bulb just explodes over my head. And the Lord speaks so clearly to me. And he says, I've designed you in a particular way. I've given you these gifts. I've got this huge wave, and I've got this really cool surfboard. Do you want to get on it and go for a ride with me? And of course, the wave is becoming a novelist. So I turned to Darcy and I said, oh my gosh, I know why you're fasting. She says, why? And I said, I am supposed to be a novelist. And Darcy looks at me and she says, wait a minute. I've been hungry for 3 days and you get the answer. Oh, and so, yeah, so we laughed about that for a while. But after we got done, I realized, oh my gosh, this is the Lord. This is the Lord. And I know some of my writer friends have not had necessarily the most supportive spouse. And I have to tell you, I wouldn't be chatting with you right now if Darcy hadn't been who she is. because she is the one that has carried me through this journey. She's the one that's talked me off the ledge so many times. They've got she set up a lawn chair out there. I mean, she has been and still is my rock in that journey. And so I dove into it. I started writing. I prayed, Lord, what story should I write? What story should I write? And I just felt like he said, do that one about the architect. Do that one about the architect where he finds this home that turns out to be a physical manifestation of his soul. And so I started working on it. 2000 it took me 6 years to finish it. Right, first novel takes a long, long time, and so that first novel turned into Rooms. And for those of you who don't know the story, essentially, the story of Rooms, it's the story of this young Seattle software executive that inherits a home down on the Oregon coast that turns out to be a physical manifestation of his soul. And so I went to work on that thing and worked and worked and worked and worked at it, and finally finished it at the end of 2005. And I had a friend who knew a few friends. I had a friend who knew 4 editors. And so I sent the manuscript to them. And I got 3 responses back pretty quickly. Basically, yeah, nope, we don't have room for something like this. Nope, this wouldn't fit. I mean, it was rejection, but it wasn't, it just wouldn't work for them. So that didn't hurt too bad. The 4th rejection, this is the one that devastated me. And remind me to tell you the follow-up story. I'm going to tell you the story now of what happened with this particular editor, the 4th editor. I want you to remind me, Cindy, to tell the follow-up story to what happened with this 4th editor. But this 4th editor writes back and he says, Jim, 2 questions. Is your manuscript finished and how long is it? And I'm like, this is it. This is it. I'm going to get published. I was so excited. So I wrote back, yes, it's finished. It's 148,000 words. And those of you who are, I can see Anne laughing. Those of you who are writers are going, wow, he really didn't know what he was doing, did he? No, I didn't. And so I write back. He writes back to me. And he says, it's not my job as an editor to put your manuscript into the condition where it might be considered for publication. It was very terse, very quick. I thought, oh, okay, I didn't know. So I work up my courage and I write back. I say, if I can get this manuscript to the right word count, is this something you'd take a look at? I get an email back later that day and it says, Dear Jim, you don't know how lucky you are and fortunate and privileged that I would even respond to you. I almost didn't. And then he says, you might consider reading Noah Lukeman's book, the first 5 pages. And this was back to being rejected by the school paper, because Noah Lukeman's The First 5 Pages is a book I had torn apart and underlined and read multiple times and tried to take the things in that book and apply it to my manuscript. And so again, it was just saying, you can't write. You do not have the ability to write. Why are you pursuing this thing? Why are you going after this dream? And so he signed off the email. This isn't funny. I don't know why I'm laughing. He signed off the email in all caps, right? Which means shouting, this is our last communication. And so it was devastating to me. It was absolutely devastating. So that is that's spring of 2006. And I just said to Darcy, I'm done, because she was like, why aren't you sending your manuscript out? Why aren't you working on your manuscript? I said, I'm done. And I even stopped reading fiction because I thought I can't read novels and know that I'm never going to go down this path. And Darcy was the one that kept pushing. And a friend of mine said, hey, there's this writing conference I'm going to go to in California, the Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference. You should come with me. Nah, I'm not going to do that. And Darcy said, I think the Lord is telling you, you need to go to that thing. And so, long story short, I ended up going to it, and my world just exploded. I met all these agents and editors and other authors, and by the time I left the conference, I had like 4 editors that wanted to see the manuscript and 3 agents that wanted to see the manuscript. And I'll fast forward and say I ended up that summer having 3 agents interested in the manuscript. I ended up with a 4th agent that I had met at the conference, who was an editor at the time and then opened his own agency. And so, you know, 4 months after the conference, I had an agent. And he shopped it to everyone. This weird book about this guy who inherits a home that turns out to be a physical manifestation of his soul. Shopped it to everyone, all the major publishers, and all the major publishers came back and said, well, the guy can write okay, but what in the world do we do with this weird book? It doesn't fit in a genre. Where does it fit? It doesn't fit anywhere. We don't know what to do with it. Sorry. And so my agent comes back to me and he goes, well, what do you want to do? We can go to some smaller publishers, or we can put it on a shelf. Put it on the shelf. I said, great, let's put it on the shelf. And I'll write my second book first. And then once that is published and people like it, then we can go back and get this one published. Well, one of the editors who rejected it wrote this note to my agent, basically said, I was so impressed with Rubart's work, I found myself wishing another author had written it. And that wasn't a slam on me. It was, I need an author who is a name. I can't take a chance on this weird book with a no-name author. And he signs it off. At the bottom, he says, but if this doesn't sell in 6 months, bring it back to me. Well, those of you in publishing know that publishing is glacial. At least traditional publishing is glacial. And so 6 months really means a year. So fall of 2006. And now the book was shopped fall of 2006. Nobody wanted it. Now it's fall of 2007. And I end up at the ACFW conference, and the editor who rejected it but said those encouraging things is taking appointments. So I'm like, I'm getting an appointment with this gentleman. And so I do, and I sit down with them, and I'm a marketing branding guy, right? So I want to do something a little more creative than just, hey, I'm the guy that. So I sit down. His name's David Webb. Great guy. I sit down, I say, can I read an email to you? He kind of looks at me, he goes, yeah, sure. So I read his own email back to him, right? And he gets this look on his face, and he says, oh my gosh, you're the one that wrote Rooms. And I said, yeah. He said, I've read 200 manuscripts since I read yours, and yours is the one I can't get out of my mind. Do you want to take another run at it? It's like, yes, I do want to take another run at it. Absolutely, yes. And that was fall of 2007. Again, publishing is glacial. By July of 2008, we had a deal, and that's how I got my first book published. And I tell you all that to tell you a little bit about my story, but it's deeper than that. I tell you that story because right now, some of you are sitting there and you have a dream that God has planted in your heart, and the enemy has tried to steal it. Maybe he has stolen it. And obviously, I don't know what your dream is, but maybe it's to open a restaurant. Maybe it's to open a women's shelter. Maybe it's to work with unwed mothers. Maybe it's, I don't know what your dream is, but I know God is the giver of dreams. And I know he wants to take our unique abilities and talents. And so I'm telling you, rejection is part of it. The enemy coming against it is part of it. It's just part of it. And so I want to encourage you to not let that dream die, to go after it. Because here's the thing that I've learned about writing. In the end, if you say, what is the main thing you've learned about being an author? I would say it's that it's not about being an author. I got into this really thinking it was about the writing, that I was going to write these books, right? And that's what it was about. But it's not. What it's about is it's putting me in situations where I can fall deeper in love with the Father, deeper in love with the Spirit, deeper in love with the Son, that I can become more conformed to the image of Christ, that I can become more aligned, because we're out of alignment, right? I can be more aligned to him, the heart of the matter is my whole writing journey has been about me learning two things. And these are the only two things that matter. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And love your neighbor and love yourself. I guess that's three things. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So I guess what I'm telling you is, some of you are saying, I went after the dream, Jim, and it crashed and burned. That's okay. Do it again. And if it crashes and burns again, that's okay too, because it's about us knowing the Father. It's about that intimate relationship with the Father. That's what it's about in the end. So.
Yeah, we've had a lot of comments of people that either are about to read that book or have read it. Julia said that she read it in her book club, and that it was a great book for discussion. It's a very creative kind of story, and so I'm not surprised that you had some trouble initially selling it because publishers didn't know where to put it. But I think we need those refreshing kind of different kind of twist kind of stories that speak to people's hearts in different ways. It is a great book. I recommend it.
Oh,
Did
thanks.
you get back to that other? I was supposed to remind you of the fourth editor.
Oh,
Your
right.
story?
Thank you, Cindy. So again, it's not about the writing story. So, or follow up to the story. So that rejection happened in early 2006. Fast forward to spring of 2009. So I guess we're 3 years later, a little over 3 years later. And no, it's 4 years later. So it's spring of 2010. And at that point, I'm on the board of the Northwest Christian Writers Association. And they have an annual conference every year in the Seattle area. And the director of the conference sends out an email to the board, all of us on staff there, and says, hey, we've got editors and agents coming in for the conference. Anybody willing to volunteer to drive down to SeaTac and pick people up? Here's the list of editors and agents. You know where this is going. I look down the list of editors and agents, and there he is. There's his name. He's coming to the conference. And the Spirit says, you need to go pick him up. It's like, no, Lord, no, I don't need to do that. You need to go pick him up, Jim. So I write back and I say, I'll pick him up. And, that's like 3 days out. And so I'm just nervous all those 3 days. And then finally it comes time to go pick him up. And I can remember driving up to SeaTac, Seattle Tacoma Airport. And I know what he looks like. I mean, I know who he is. And I see him standing there and my heart starts to pound. And you have to remember, if you're not, I don't know how many of you are writers and readers or just readers. If you're just readers, agents and editors get thousands of manuscripts. So he wouldn't remember me. He's not going to remember me at all, but I certainly know who he is. So I'm not worried about him recognizing me. I'm worried about my nerves, facing this guy. And so I park my car. I get out of the car. I walk around to shake his hand and say, hello, nice to meet you. And it was like giants in the land, right? Where it's this guy is a giant and I am an ant. And I just heart pounding, as I said. And I shake his hand, say, good to meet you. And something just melts. He gets in my car. We're 2 minutes away from the airport and the rest of it melts away. And I realize, oh my goodness. He's just a scared, insecure little boy, just like me. He's trying to find his way in the world. And so I start asking questions. We start talking. By the time we get to the conference, which is about 40 minutes away, 35, 40 minutes away, we are friends. And we end up hanging out at the conference. And we ended up exchanging business cards. And then I go for the coup de grace. It's like, why not go for it all the way? I said, I had this book that just came out. and I'm wondering if I could send it to you. Maybe you might like to read it. So he says, sure, send it to me. So I send him rooms. And about 3 weeks later, I get this email. Oh my gosh, Jim, I was on my way back from an Irma Bombeck conference. And so I took this on the plane with me. I could not put it down. It was fantastic. I'm going to put up a 5-star review on Amazon for you. And he was good to his word to do that. And to this day, when we see each other at conferences, we hang out, we hug each other. He'll retweet my stuff. He promotes my stuff. It's just crazy, right? That's God. That is God. God desires unity. God desires reconciliation. God desires restoration. And I'm not saying it happens in every single case, but I know that's God's heart. And so again, that was so much more about than just the writing. It was so much more than that. So yeah, that's the follow-up. And one more lesson in that. So I don't know where you need to step into something right now. I don't know where you need to step into something that's challenging or difficult, or you do not want to do the pickup from the airport. But I would encourage you to do it because the Lord has something in that for you. And one more just story or one more lesson that I learned from that whole experience is, remember I told you I submitted to him, I sent my query letter to him, and then he wrote back and said, well, you might consider reading Noah Lukeman's The First 5 Pages. And what I took that as is, you have no ability to write. It took me years to realize I didn't send him my manuscript. All I sent him was the query letter. And so he didn't even have a chance to sample my writing. But somehow I got it in my head that he'd read the manuscript and was rejecting that. So you see how subtle our enemy is to try to get these lies in, to get us to believe and to get us off track. So again, as you're pursuing this dream, as you are facing down the giants, remember you have two presences, two beings that want to help you. You have an enemy that wants to help you fail and be destroyed, and you have the creator that wants to come alongside you and be your champion and see you succeed.
Yes, that's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing it with us. Patty says, it's not a question, but a comment, that she's so glad to hear you address spiritual warfare because so many people sweep it under the rug as though it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's interesting that we do that. I mean, much more so in Western countries like the United States than, you go overseas. In some countries, it's like, yeah, you mean you guys don't? Isn't that in the Bible? And so I'm C.S. Lewis. I'm kind of a student of C.S. Lewis, not just for his Chronicles of Narnia book, but for all his books. And he has that great quote. I'm going to say it wrong, but we make two mistakes. Either we see a devil under every bush, or we think he doesn't exist, and neither are good camps to be in. But yeah, I see a lot more people. I see a lot more error, not on the devil under every bush. I see a lot more error in, oh, he doesn't exist. And when you look at Jesus, a third of Jesus's healings in the New Testament come from the casting out of demons. You kind of go, I guess that did go on a little bit. I guess that was a problem. John 10:10, the thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Well, that thief is Satan. So we just need to be aware of it, and I don't think we are probably enough.
Rebecca has a question. She wants to know if you can speak about the inspiration for your Wellspring series.
Oh, yeah. The inspiration for my Wellspring series. So I signed a contract. My first 3 books were with B&H Fiction, and then I signed a contract with Thomas Nelson Fiction. And the publisher at the time, a gentleman named Alan Arnold, and he and I were kind of starting to brainstorm on what my first book would be with Thomas Nelson, which turned out to be Soul's Gate. And so we went to a friend of his private ranch, which is called Wellspring. So that's where the name comes from. So it's this private ranch in Colorado. And so I've got pictures of the Wellspring. So I took that as a setting. I mean, I actually wrote about that spot, right? I used that for a very real home base for the story. But in terms of how the story itself came together, I am one of those writers, and I'm not sure if you're a seat of the pantser. Are you a pantser? Yeah. Okay, I thought so. Thought I remember that right. And so I'm a seat of the pants writer, I guess another way to say it is a discovery writer. And so with that series in particular, I knew I wanted an ensemble of characters. I'd done I hadn't done multiple POVs before, and I thought, well, this will be an interesting challenge. So I have 4 main POVs in each of those 3 books in that series. And so what I did is I just started writing. I had an idea and I just started writing and going with it. And my main character I knew was going to be Reese coming out of the gate. And he's this powerful spiritual guy that has really been called to lead these three other men and women, and they call themselves the Warriors Riding. Um, and that comes from a men's group that I used to lead called Warriors Riding. So, which leads me to the secret, or how I develop my characters. How I develop my characters is I simply take all of them from my own life. And so I take different aspects of my life or different things that I want to be, and I just stick them in a story. I have a friend, um, and I think most of you would know who he is. And he said to me once, he said, "Jim, my books are simply my private journals in published form." And when he said that, I thought, oh, you got to be kidding me. That's exactly right. That's me. I just take the things that I am struggling with in my life, the things that I'm wrestling with, and I just stick them in a book. So there's a saying in writing that don't write about your life. It's not that interesting. In other words, most novelists make the mistake of making their first book autobiographical, and then after that they go, oh, I can't do that. I got to make it about other people. And I've just never figured that out. All of my books are autobiographical. So if you know me, you go, oh my gosh, I see you there, Jim. I see you there. I see you there. I see you there. Now obviously I'm going to take other characters that are interesting and put them in there, and obviously it's not going to be just me, but it's going to be taking parts of me, parts of the things I struggle with, and putting them in these interesting people. So if you know me, like I just said, if you know me, you're going to go, oh, Jim, I see you all over all of your books. And then what I do is I just take things from my life that I find interesting, or I take things from people around me and I stick them in books, my books. So it's really fun for people that are close to me to, oh, I know what you're doing here. Oh, I know who this character is. I know who this character is. So that's really where Wellspring came from. I just took the stuff going on in my life at the time and stuck it in a book, or 3 books, I should say.
So does that make your family a little nervous then? Are they afraid they might end up in a book?
Oh, they do end up in books. They do end up in books. But here's the thing. Here's the great thing about putting people in books, and especially villains, right? Because then you can get in trouble potentially. But I have this book, The Long Journey to Jake Palmer, and the premise of that book is it's impossible to read the label when you're standing inside the bottle, and we are all standing inside our own bottles. And so we do not see the glory that is in us. We do not see the strength that is in us. We do not see the light that we bring to other people. And if we could read each other's labels, and I could say, Cindy, do you realize this groundbreaking thing about yourself? First of all, it'd be hard for you to hear because it's like, we don't speak to each other this way. And second, it's like, really? Do you really think that, Jim? Hard for us to believe the glory that's on us. Anyway, all that as a background. I took a character and I put a character in that book. It was just a lady that had really hurt my wife. So it's like, right, don't do that. So I stuck her in a book to get back at her. Plus, I just thought she was a great character. The way she manipulated things, I thought, ooh, this is a good character. And so I stuck it in a book. And this is somebody pretty close to the family. And my son Taylor, who I have the writing academy with, he comes up and he goes, "Oh, is da 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 da?" And I said, "Nope, sorry, not that person. He couldn't even see it. In other words, if you do it well, those villains are not going to be found out. There's a famous story in writing about a book party in New York, and this gal comes up to this guy and goes, "Oh my gosh, I hated her. I hated her. She was a witch. Could not stand her. Oh, what a character." And he's going, "Well, thank you very much." And inside he's going, "It's you. You're the character." And she couldn't see it. So for the most part, you're not going to see it. One of the funnest characters though that I did, where I just took them right from real life, right? Again, was actually The Long Journey to Jake Palmer again. And in that book, I have a friend named Susan May Warren, Susie Warren. Some of you know her as a friend, and some of you know her as an author. And Susie and I, she's kind of like that long lost sister. We just have a really cool relationship. And so I thought, well, Susie's interesting. I'll just take her and stick her in a book. And so, I mean, I don't hide her at all. I call her Susie. I call different last name, but I call her Susie, and all her characteristics are on display. So that was a fun way to say, "Hey, Susie, this is how I see you." Um, I'm not sure how I got off on that
But
tangent.
that hasn't gotten you into trouble? Any
No, it has never gotten me into trouble. I will tell you my latest book, The Pages of Her Life. That one I was worried about, because that one reflected a work experience I had, and anybody who read that, who was near to it, would go, "Oh my gosh, this is pretty spot on." So I did write to my publisher and I say, "I need to make you aware of this. Do you think we're okay? What do you think?" And they reassured me, "Nope, you were good. We're good." So
It's fiction, right?
it's fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Jim, we do have a question from Patty. Patty wants to know, she says, in mentioning the Wellspring Ranch, do you normally like your settings in real towns or cities, or a fictitious one? And what advantages do you see in whatever you do?
That's a great question, Patty, because a lot of authors like to create fictitious towns where they can really kind of do some unusual things. I tend to prefer real places. In all my books, my settings are all real places. And a lot of them, like The Chair was in Colorado Springs. A lot of them are in the Pacific Northwest, because I love the Pacific Northwest, and it has a lot of interesting places. So yeah, I don't think I have any novels where it's not a real place, which makes it really fun, especially for people who live in the area who go, "Oh, I know where that is. I know where that is." And for my readers that aren't in this area, I can introduce them to the area where I live. So it's been really fun to do that over the years.
Now we have a question from Julia. Besides C.S. Lewis, what other authors do you find yourself excited to read, eagerly await new material? Have you considered a writing project or collaboration with another author?
Um, yeah, I'll answer the first part of the question first, and then the second part of the question. So it's interesting. When I was coming up, or not even coming up, when I was reading, I was this voracious reader, and so this is I don't know, 80, 86, and I really started trying to find this weird type of Christian fiction. Um, the type of Christian fiction that I wanted to write, and there just wasn't that much of it out there. And so I discovered this guy, Stephen Lawhead, and he had a book, Dream Thief, and then he had Halls of the Guardian Kings, and he had Emperon. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. I just fell in love with this guy, Stephen Lawhead. And then I discovered this guy, Frank Peretti, right? And so these guys are writing the kind of stuff I like. And then um, I discovered this guy, Bill Myers, right? And then finally I discovered this guy named Ted Decker. And so those were the four guys. It's like, okay, those are the four guys. I really love reading their stuff. And then as an aspiring author, aspiring writer, it's like, those are the four guys I'd like to meet, right? You want to meet these people that you enjoy their books. And so those were the four guys I wanted to meet. And out of those four, the one guy I really thought, I think we would really connect with is Ted Decker. I just thought I would love to meet Ted someday. And that's one of the coolest things about the writing world, is you get to meet you get to meet these people, right? And in Ted's case, Ted has become a really close friend, and it's it's not Ted Decker, the author, anymore, this guy that's well known. It's just Ted, my friend. Um, and I love that aspect of it. It's so fun to come alongside people. And Anne can speak to this, where like the ACFW conference, to be around all these weird people. Everybody in that ballroom is just this strange person that gets you. It's just, I didn't expect that in the writing world. That was an added bonus. I did not expect that. When I was first getting into it, somebody said, Jim, some of your closest friends will end up being in the publishing world. And I'm like, no, they won't. I've got my friends. I don't need these publishing people. And sure enough, dear friends, a guy named Mick Silva, some of you know Mick, just never expected that in a million years, and has become a dear friend. So lots of really close friends. As far as writing projects, I've never written with anybody before. I've never collaborated with anybody before, but that is about to change. I was speaking about Susie Warren, my friend Susie, a few minutes ago. Susie and I and her son David, the three of us, are partnering up to write a series together. And that, well, I should say we've partnered up and written a series together. So all 6 books are written. Right now I'm editing book 4. Susie did the bulk of the writing. I'm doing some of the editing. And then my big contribution to the project is I'm going to be the voice of Rembrandt Stone. That's the name of our hero. So I'm going to be the voice. I'm going to get into the studio, in fact, next week, and start voicing the first book in this series. And we're going to have 6 books come out. They're going to come out all next year, starting in February, every other month to the end of the year. So really excited about that project. I've never collaborated with somebody before, so we'll see how it goes. The series is called The True Lies of Rembrandt Stone. And it's essentially the story of this detective who travels back in time to solve cold cases. So.
Ooh. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because you do narrate your own books. Have you done all of them? Or I know I've listened to at least one that you've done.
Yeah, so I've narrated 7 of my 10 books, and then I guess I've narrated 8 of my 10 books, and then someone else narrated a 9th book, and then 1 book is not in audio. So yeah, I guess I've narrated 8 of the 10. And then what's been really fun is I've started narrating other authors' books. And so I've been doing that for a number of years now, where you get to take on, and I've done both fiction and nonfiction, which has been really fun. But essentially being an audiobook narrator is being an actor, right? You're just an actor. You just aren't on stage, but you're still acting. And I took acting in college, and my degrees in broadcast journalism, so I'm comfortably behind a microphone. And so it was just a very natural thing to step into that I didn't see coming. I didn't see that I was going to end up doing this, but I've discovered I really love it. So any of you that are going, gosh, I've always wanted to try that, the entry barrier to voicing your own books is really low. It's a skill, it's a talent like anything else. I wouldn't just say go do it if you've never had any acting experience. But if you said, well, I don't have any acting experience, Jim, but I'd still love to try it, it's like, great, do it. Just know that there is a learning curve, just like anything, to get good at it.
Okay, we do have some more questions. Let's see, Melissa, question. She wanted about the writing process. She wants to know, do you write every day? Do you block certain amounts of time for writing, or write when the need arises?
I'm a write when the need arises type person. So I'm really good writing on deadline when I have that deadline hanging over my head. But the type of business I'm in, and I'm writing all the time, right, in one form or another. But as far as fiction, it's really, okay, do I have a deadline? And then I write to that. But yeah, what I do, because I run the Rubart Writing Academy, so I'm writing weekly for that. And then the stuff I'm doing with Susie, I'm working on writing there. And so, yeah, I feel like I write every day.
Okay, I want to make sure that I've got a new question here, but I may have to scroll back and see if we missed anybody's. But Jeanette, how much of your story do you know before you start writing? Which I think that's a great question. In other words, do you prep any of the story before writing?
Yeah, I have a feel. I have an idea. I have what I think is a compelling idea. And that's really the start. And my process is a bit schizophrenic. I'll describe it to you. So, well, I'll take you through a story. The Chair, my third novel, which is the story of this young antiques dealer who gets given a chair that he slowly comes to realize was the chair that Jesus sat in after he was resurrected, and a chair that has supernatural healing powers. And how that story came about was I was reading Chuck Colson when he was alive. He had this, I don't know if it was it might have been a daily email, maybe a weekly email called Breakpoint, where he would just talk about things. And one of the things he talked about was that historians have noted that some of the plows Jesus made lasted until the 2nd century, which tells you, okay, those plows were pretty well put together, which doesn't surprise you, right? Given that it was Jesus. And so my mind goes, wow, what if Jesus made something that lasted until today? What if it was a chair? What if it was the chair he sat in when he appeared to the disciples after he was resurrected? What if that chair has supernatural healing powers, right? So all of a sudden, boom, I've got this idea. And then at that point, I go, okay, somebody's got to give him this chair. Yeah, let's make it a young antiques dealer. And okay, let's have a mentor character. Let's have an old woman, and it was passed down to her through the generations. She's the one that gives it to him. Okay, good. And then let's have him have a brother. Let's have Corin, my main character, have a brother, and they have a conflict. Okay, go. And then I just start writing. And so in that case, I got 60,000 words into the book. 60,000 words, just stream of conscious, just seeing the scenes play in my head and just put it down. And scenes all over the place. So a scene would come to, ooh, that'd be good at the end of the book, and I'll write it down. Oh, that could be good at the middle of the book. Oh, write it down. And so it's this jumbled mess in my computer. And so what I do at that point, and Scrivener is a way to do this, I like doing it where I can see it all at once. A computer screen, even a big one, is too small for me. And so literally what I do is I take sticky notes and I write down each scene on a sticky note, and then I put it up on my wall on a big white piece of paper. And then I just look at it. I go, okay, oh, there's a gap there. We got to fill in there. And so I'm just moving these stickies around until it works. And in that particular case, I had all these cool scenes and all this stuff going on. And I thought, I really don't know what the story's about. 60,000 words in, I don't know what the story's about. But you know what? That's okay. And so at that point, I stopped and I said, what is this story? Oh, the hook is this chair that Jesus made that's lasted until today. That's the high concept. But what is the heart of this story? And the heart of the story is the estrangement between these two brothers and their broken relationship and the restoration of their relationship. That's the heart of the story. And so once I got that, then I can fill in the rest of the gaps and then lay the rest of the thing out. And I think that book took me 3 months to write. So it's not like it has to be a huge, long process to write it. But as a discovery writer, you have to trust yourself and let yourself just go. And then when it dries up, it's like, oh, that scene stopped playing in my head. Okay. And then go on to another. Find a lot of writers will beat themselves up, and the editor comes in and goes, Jim, you got to finish that scene, or that's a bad word, or that's not working. I go, I don't care. You, Mr. Editor, you go to the basement for a while, but I'll need you later, just not right now. So stay in the basement, and I'll invite you back when it's time for you to play.
Okay, Sandy's question, you hinted at this already, I think, but she wants to know, do you find that there are underlying themes in your stories that you didn't intentionally put in there?
Yes and no. Wow, what a great question. Yes and no, because I remember reading this once from a musician who was asked, what are the meanings of your songs? And he said, I don't know. I know what it means to me, but your interpretation of it is going to have a much different meaning, perhaps. And so I've had that happen to me again and again and again, where readers will go, "Oh, wow, I can't believe you put this in there, Jim. That was really powerful." And I go, "Thank you. I didn't know I put that in there." And I love that, because that's the spirit, that's the creative process of putting something in there that I did not see being in there. But as far as, do I have a theme in my books? Yes. Really, it's the theme of my life. I do this exercise, Taylor and I do this exercise at the Rubart Writing Academy, where our belief and my belief is, you cannot write your most powerful stories until you know what the theme of your life is. And so we take them through this exercise of discovering, what is the theme of your life. And so the theme of my life is two things. I want to help people step into greater freedom, and I want people to step into their true identity. That's everything that I'm about. And so consequently, if you look at the theme, that theme in one way or another is throughout all my books. It just keeps recurring over and over and over again. And underneath that theme of freedom and identity, you have sub-themes that come out. So for example, The Long Journey to Jake Palmer, which I've referenced a few times, the deeper theme there is, you are enough. Because so many people, especially women, feel like, I'm never enough. I did the kids, I did my husband, I took care of everything, and it's just never enough. And so really what I wanted to say in that book is, yeah, you are enough. You are enough. Well, that comes under the theme of freedom, because if you can realize, wow, I am enough, then that really will set you free. So again, I kind of have an overall theme of freedom and identity in all my books, and then sub themes under that I am aware of. But the beautiful thing is to have themes come in that I didn't even see there.
Okay, Janice wants to know, have you ever had a problem ending a story? And it sounds like you did, maybe with your 148,000 word manuscript there.
Yeah. Yeah, with that one, I didn't have a problem ending it. I just didn't know how long it was supposed to be. Um, um, Usually I don't. Usually I'll get the ending of a book, um, either right at the start or part of the way through. With Rooms, I knew how the thing ended before I'd had like 5,000 words written. So most of the time I know how they're going to end. The only one the one I really had problems with was Memory's Door, the second in the Wellspring series. I couldn't figure out how to end the second book. And that was really a struggle. But other than that, usually they come to me pretty quick.
So I'm assuming that you have learned some things by writing so many books. It's a process. So do you have some unfinished books or half-finished books that you've given up on? Have any in your drawer?
I don't. I don't know why the Lord did this, but I don't have any manuscripts that. Rooms was my first try at a novel, and it got published. Although, well, I take that back. I take that back. So Rooms was the first book I tried, and it got published. And then Book of Days got published, The Chair got published, Soul's Gate got published, Memory's Door got published, Spirit Bridge got published. And then I wrote a book and turned it into my publisher on April 1st, 2014. And it turns out that that's a pretty apropos day, because some of you know the story, but on January 14th of January 11th of 2014, I was out of town, and a 130-foot, 20,000-pound tree went through the corner of my bedroom. I was not home. My wife was home. This thing, went 6 feet from her. And it should have fallen and killed her and killed my son. And it didn't. And I don't know why the Lord spared me that horror, and my older son that horror. But that absolutely turned my life upside down. And I had prayed a prayer a month before that I said, Lord, slay me, take me through the fire. And I don't know why in the world I prayed that. Please don't pray that. You don't want to pray that. But that's the prayer I prayed. And that tree went through the house and it just upended our life. Darcy started going through severe PTSD, as you can imagine. Our house is ripped apart. We're living in a hotel. I'm dealing with the insurance company. I'm dealing with the contractor. I'm dealing with the bank. I'm running my marketing company. And oh, by the way, you got a book due April 1st. And I turned that book in, and my publisher wrote back 2 or 3 weeks later and said, Jim, this is unpublishable. This thing, it's just horrible. And guys, it took me out, because the Lord was doing an amazing work in me in that moment. And the work, we only have a few minutes, so I'm going to speed up this story. There's a longer version, but I'm going to give you the quick version. And basically, Darcy had been this rock and the support, and all of a sudden, roles had to reverse, and I had to be her rock and her support. And what the Lord showed me very, very precisely was your identity, Jim, and where you get your validation and your worth is being this best-selling, award-winning author. And we're going to take that away from you. So this is the first book I ever had rejected. And it put me on a 6-month path of finally getting to the point where I said, you know what, I'm giving up writing. Yeah, Lord, if you want me to give up writing, I'll give it up. It's you. You are the one that validates me, nothing else, because nothing else can validate me like you. And so I scrapped that book. I kept maybe 20% of it, and I rewrote the book. And what's ironic about that, or the coolest thing about that story, is I rewrote this book. And of course, the book is all about validation, right? I just, again, took what was going on in my life, stuck it in a book. And that book was The 5 Times I Met Myself. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful, because I came into Darcy toward the end of that summer and I said, you know what, honey, I don't have to write novels anymore. And she looks at me and she goes, oh my gosh, I almost believe you. And it was just gone. The validation was the Lord. And in the Lord's amazing sense of humor, that book won the Visionary Christie for that year. And then it won the Christie Book of the Year. It won the grand prize. It's like winning Best Picture in the Oscars. That book, which is about validation, which is about giving up being an author, ends up winning the Book of the Year, right? And so again, I guess I'll go back in closing, because I know we're getting close to the end here. In closing, it's not about the writing. It's not about me being an author. It's about me being conformed and dying to self and being conformed to the image of Jesus, and knowing him him intimately, and learning to love. And so I encourage you to go for your dreams. I encourage you to risk. I encourage you to step through your fear. But most of all, I encourage you to go, it's not about the end result. It is about the journey. It's about falling deeper in love with Jesus.
That's a great way to wrap it up. It's very inspirational. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you being here. And I want to let everybody know that we do have some panels coming up. They're in the chat. The website's in the chat, so you can find it and come back and hear from more authors. But thank you, Jim, and we appreciate you being here. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna, okay. I want to make sure I stopped recording at some point, but thank you. And I think we got to most of the questions. I think I might've missed a couple, but they know where to find you.
Yeah, and you can email me. Email me, jameslrubart@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to chat with you. So please don't hesitate to do that.
All right, I'm gonna put that before we leave here, jameslrubart.com.
At gmail.com.
Oh, that was the website. Okay. And I did not send that to everybody. There we go. That might be helpful. There we go. Okay. But thank you for being here. And I want to invite you all over to the other panels. And also, we do have a giveaway going on. If you didn't see that in the chat, it's only tonight. So you have a chance to win some prizes. We got some cool things. We have like, cool mug here. And so be sure and get over to our website and look at that. So thank you, Jim.
Thanks for having me. All right, guys.